Hello and welcome to Unzip Media podcast. We're here at an AI policy event in Amsterdam. I'm here with Thomas Ohle, the founder and former CEO of EU Startups.
Still CEO.
This is still CEO. Perfect. So first of all, Thomas, congratulations on the recent deal that you had, like an exit event for EU Startups. And so let's just start from the beginning. So what is EU Startups, and why did you even start it, and when did that happen?
Yeah, well, I started EU Startups in November 2010.
That's like 15, almost 16 years ago. God.
Yes, and back then there were some like national blogs. I grew up in Germany, so I read like
Oh
Gründerszene.de,
yeah.
Deutsche
Was it
Startups.de.
already around?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
but there was no European coverage yet. Of course, we had TechCrunch, but back at that time they were still very heavily and exclusively focused on the US. And so I just saw more and more cross-border activity happening, so at some point I thought this deserves more visibility, and then I just started blogging on a daily basis on startups in Europe. It was a hobby project for a very long time until 2016, and only from
So it
then
was just
onwards.
you. So for a few years
Yes.
it was just you writing about startups.
I had like one or two contributors between 2010 and 2016, but it was mainly me.
Right. And you are like, so your own background is not journalism, right?
No. I worked in the German media industry, but more in the advertising and brand management side. Then while working in the German media industry, I had some internet projects myself. So I created a job portal for the German PR and marketing agency industry, agenturjobs.de, and sold that also a little bit. But that was before I was kind of immersed in that startup scene. I didn't even realize that something like that could be described as startup. And and then no, I got more and more interested in internet business models, technology, and then started writing about it.
Right. So in 2016, you start as a full-time founder and CEO of EU Startups. Did you hire journalists right away? Like, how did it go?
Yeah. No, I first I didn't hire journalists. I didn't went into a fancy co-working, but I just was cranking out stories from my bedroom, which I think my girlfriend back at the time didn't find too exciting. It must probably didn't seem like work for her. I don't know. So at the end of the day, she was kind of asking me, "Oh, what's you didn't do any homework?" Like, well, I was working in the bed. Like, well, that's another story. No, slowly and steadily, it immersed into a legit small media and events company. So at some point, I hired kind of the first freelance writers, and then in 2014, actually before running it as a full-time gig, I started the EU Startups conference in Munich, which I then did in Berlin the next 3 years afterwards, and eventually. Pretty shortly after doing this as a full-time gig, I then relocated to Barcelona and grew the team from there.
No, that sounds great. And in 2016, I'm just trying to remember. So it was 10 years ago. At that time, what did we have in the ecosystem in terms of media? Like TechCrunch Europe was a thing for sure. The next web was around. TechEU was already around as
No.
well. No,
No.
was it not?
I think, well, no, true. I think tech.eu probably, I think in 2014 they started, yeah. So we were technically there before them, but 2 years later, only then I started doing it full time. But it's true, it was a different landscape, I think more fragmented. There were a lot of national startup blogs and publications out there, I think more than today.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I find positive that now there's more like a cross-border European perspective, at least more than it used to be.
I'm afraid it's changing back a little bit. So
Hopefully
that's
not,
another topic
yes.
for this conversation. But yeah. Okay, so you started in earnest in 2016, and so what was your vision for EU Startup then, and how did it evolve over time?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to shed more light on all those great innovators from across Europe, to bring them together with events. So basically, the idea was to build a European TechCrunch, or a better version of TechCrunch for Europe, so to speak. And yeah, we never really raised funding. So Your Startups is bootstrapped aside of a tiny equity crowdfunding campaign in 2019, but which was more an effort of getting our readers literally like kind of more invested in what we're doing. So we never had like rocket speed growth. It was more like slow and steady growth over the years. And I kept doing it because I saw our impact. I saw that like founders were meeting investors at our event. They were getting great hires because they got visibility on our website and so on and so forth. So and to be honest, like it's also one of the most exciting jobs out there because you can speak to kind of the innovators of tomorrow. You can
Absolutely.
speak to passionate people who have crazy ideas. Of course, many of those ideas are too crazy, and most of them they don't make it. But still, a interesting type of human to interact with on a
Absolutely.
weekly basis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And at the peak, and when was that peak? When you started was the biggest in terms of headcount, and how many people did you have then, or is it now?
Yeah, it's now.
Uh-huh.
So actually, we are at our peak.
Right.
Not necessarily headcount. I think headcount is one aspect, but we've never been doing so much revenue. We've never been so profitable. So you were mentioning shortly this sale that recently
Yeah.
happened. That was also not a fire sale at all. So it was more like a strategic combination of two ecosystem players in Europe. And no, we're doing very well. We actually just brought in like a new event manager just yesterday, and we're not big. So we're at the moment like 9 to 10 full-time people and some freelancers. But we're on a very healthy basis. We always were profitable except for this 1 year in COVID. And I think EU Startup still has the greatest time ahead of it. Also due to the changes that are happening recently in European media.
Yeah.
I think our friends from Sifted.eu might also see that. I think EU Startups is equally well positioned than them. Of course, they're coming a little bit from a different perspective, right? It's more like this hardcore traditional journalism, while EU Startups comes more from a grassroots movement. But yeah, I think our cost structure is definitely very healthy, and you can bet that EU Startups will be still around in 3 years and 5 years, and most likely in a bigger version than today.
Right. So you consider yourselves, as far as I understand, more like a trade publication rather than like a 100% journalistic outlet.
I mean, we're reporting about startups on a daily basis, and if you talk to our editorial team, David, Antonio, and our contributors, they certainly see themselves as journalists. But you said it in the beginning, I did not have a journalistic background, right? And so I just started writing about startups because I was interested in it. I'm not sure if it's necessary to have like a sophisticated journalistic background to cover this ecosystem. I think the most important is like an excitement about the sector, and maybe also yeah, an interest about innovation and about entrepreneurship. And I always had that interest, and that is what kept me going. Yeah, that's why I'm still around.
No, I fully understand, and I mean, so in my view, so what I mean when I say like a trade publication is exactly that. So basically, an entity, a media outlet that is more interested in, let's say, reporting on and chronicling a certain ecosystem rather than being skeptical, looking for scoops,
Yeah.
and basically all the other stuff that you can find in either mainstream media with tech desks or
Yes.
in publications like Sifted that employs a lot of like professional trained journalists.
Absolutely. No, for us, at least for me in the beginning, like startup founders were the superstars. And I was amazed by them. I wanted to learn more about them. I wanted to get inspired by them. So, of course, if we see negative things happening, it's also our job to point that out
Of course.
as media. But the core basis is we're cheering for startup founders in Europe. and we want to have a positive impact, bringing them together.
So what I wanted to ask next is you mentioned that you have been profitable basically since establishing the company, except for that one pandemic year, which, as far as I understand, means that a significant part of the revenue comes from the event.
Yes, that's true. I think event revenues are bigger than our media revenues for sure. And additionally, since a few years, what came on top was our involvement in some EU-funded projects where we usually support
Okay.
as dissemination partner or startup ecosystem insider, event organizers. But it's basically biggest revenue share events, second then media and EU projects, and then there are some smaller revenue streams. Also, we do a service called startup sourcing, where we work with corporates and investors and help them find startups for a very specific industry, business stage, and location. So, kind of a scouting service. And yeah.
But I believe you did at some point flirt with the idea of subscriptions and like paywalling stuff potentially. How was that experiment? How did it come to life and how did it go?
Yeah, we're still flirting with that. We have a very soft paywall installed. So if you open too many new articles on a weekly basis, you at some point will be redirected to our club membership page. And then you would need to sign up to get unrestricted access to our editorial archive and also unrestricted access to our startup and investor database. Then also club members get some discounts for software as a service deals and a few other benefits like unlimited job posts on our job board and so on and so forth. So yeah, we've been experimenting with that. I think the experiment started during COVID. And we have some revenue there, but it's not like skyrocketing and it's not as relevant as the events business or media business. So I think we will keep on experimenting on that, maybe by adding additional benefits for club members in order to give it an additional boost. But so far, it's not very relevant for us.
Right, right. So and also at some point I remember that you moved your event from Spain to Malta. So what brought you to Malta?
Yeah. Well, Malta is a beautiful island, right? So it's a nice reason from people from across Europe to come to the event and then maybe also spend a longer weekend on the island. Malta, the people there on the ground, the service providers speak perfect English because the British were there for many, many years on this island. We have a strong partner, Malta Enterprise, a economic development agency who has been supporting the event and helping it to further professionalize it. And so this mix of factors made us choose Malta. We're open potentially to new locations in 2027. We're currently exploring. The most likely scenario is that we stay in Malta, but we're currently entertaining the thought of other locations that are maybe a little bit more accessible with direct flights and regarding the amounts of hotels on the ground. But no, we're very happy with Malta so far.
Great. So this year has been most definitely rather tumultuous for the general European media landscape, but also in the in the tech niche thereof. So TNW that I used to work for has been almost fully shut down, and TechCrunch Europe basically ceased to exist in the form that it used to, and EU startups got acquired by MeOut. Why did you decide to sell?
Well, in general, I think there's still a lot of space for European tech publications, and I'm not pessimistic at all about this sector. And I think many of the changes that we recently saw were not so much because of the market environment, but rather for personal reasons, like for example, someone like Remco Jansen of Silicon Canals, who has been with the publications many, many years and was maybe looking into doing something slightly different. Also for me, rather personal reasons than business reasons. TNW, you had a big media giant involved. For them was TNW, and the European perspective maybe not exciting enough, although they were also investors in Sifted on the same side, right? So, so of course, there are challenges in the market, but also new opportunities with AI and so on and so forth. So for me, the reason why I sold was a personal one. I'm now 41. I have a daughter. Um, so at some point, I wanted to, for me personally, take some chips off the table, I guess. But I will definitely continue to be very heavily involved in EU startups for the next 3 years, potentially for the rest of my working life. I remain as passionate as I ever was for that space, and yeah, I'm excited for what's to come.
Right. How old is your daughter?
5 years.
Oh, great.
Yeah. She attended
Nice.
all recent editions of the EU Startup Summit also.
Oh,
She
there we go.
comes.
That's that's really nice. No, I fully understand, and I think this is probably the better reason, I suppose, to seek out a deal like that. How long did it take to find like a buyer that you were happy with?
Well, I never reached out to any buyers. So actually, we got some offers throughout the years, and so we didn't spend time looking for acquirers, and that's the good thing. I think we didn't sell, but we were acquired. I think that's a bit of a different perspective. We were not in the need to sell. We were not in a rush to sell. But with MeOut Group, we found an organization that very strongly aligns with our pro-European thinking, with our wish to make a positive impact in the startup ecosystem. They're also very successfully involved in EU-funded projects surrounding the topics of innovation, youth entrepreneurship, so we saw several synergies with them, and we've been working with them before in the past.
Okay, so you've known these people
Yes,
already.
yeah. It didn't came out of surprise, and no, so far so good. And the good thing is also they let us operate EU startups completely independent. So we haven't done any changes so far regarding strategy, team, content, and we are planning to rather scale up in the future. So this doesn't mean sometimes when you hear about acquisitions, then it's about okay, cost cutting. What can we change, right? But the good thing is we don't need to change anything because EU startups on the core is working well. And now we're just seeing with those additional synergies, how can we further improve what we already have.
Now that okay, I understand. And as far as I understand, you owned then close to 100% of the
Yeah, like
company.
95%.
Great. What was the multiple?
I can't disclose any financials. I can say that the Cedars shareholders, who had this tiny fractions, they had a positive outcome of their investment, and I'm personally very happy and thankful. And I still have to work. You know, it's not that I can now stop working, but no, I think it was a good deal for both sides.
Right. No, that makes sense. And but if we look at the rest of what's happened on both negative and positive side of things. So negatively, of course, some companies closed, loads of layoffs as well across the board. But also we saw new outlets being founded. There is Path Founders by Mike Butcher. There is Resilience Media. There is ETN. There is Scaling Europe. There are other similar outlets now. So where do you think the future of EU tech media lie?
Yeah, I think it's definitely exciting times for those new ventures, right? Whenever older players leave the market, there's space for new players, and also media consumption slightly changes over time. It's a new generation. They consume content also rather on places like YouTube, podcasts, and so on and so forth. It totally makes sense that there are new formats, and I'm closely watching all those new projects, and I wish all of them very well. But in the end, the tech media landscape is not an easy field to work in. So I think many of those new players might also be gone again in 1 or 2 years, unfortunately. And sorry, what was the question?
No, just in general, like where the future is, and
Yeah.
we can go even narrower than that. Like, which format do you think is going to win? Because right now we have this, like, let's say traditional online outlets like yourselves, like Sifted, for example, and then we have more video first, social first. Kind of ventures such as ETN or Scaling Europe.
Yes. Well, I think text-based formats and evergreen content and share some know-how will probably be commoditized a bit by AI, right? What will gain importance is to have personalities in the media ecosystem that share their insights through podcasts and YouTube videos, through live events. So I think opinion, unique perspectives will definitely gain of importance in the future, and we will see more of that. Um, but the fundamentals of the media business, I think, won't change. In the end, you will need to continue to engage an audience of hopefully humans and not AI bots, right? And and then you monetize them through advertising, through events, maybe subscriptions. Um, but yeah, I think like this human touch becomes even more important than it was before.
Yeah, but in terms of media, in terms of business models, though, so for you, what has worked seems to be like a very healthy mix of stuff. Do you think this is how it's going to be moving forward, or do you think there is something that EU startups could focus on and just lean into and make it the, like, I don't know, 80, 90% revenue source?
Yeah, I think there's this potential with the event, right? So I think there's no reason why the EU Startup Summit shouldn't be a much bigger event, and this is one of the areas that we're going to grow over the next few years. But I personally like to be not too dependent on one specific revenue stream because it makes the whole organization more resistant in case something happens. And in the end, it's just the basis of a media company, right? Like you have the access to the audience, and then you think about ways how you can create value for this audience, and then charge money to provide
Yeah.
this value. Yeah.
What's how big is your audience now?
Yeah, we have around 350,000 visits per month, and good times up to 1 million page views per month, around 75 to 80,000 newsletter subscribers, a nice reach on social media. Um, yeah.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, yeah. And for the longest time, I think most of the articles, most of the posts on EU startups have been funding announcements. For right now, it seems to me, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it seems to me that this is getting rapidly commoditized. Basically, it is just not some. It does not require a journalist. It barely requires a human at this point to just matter of fact report on a funding announcement. Is this something that you also see happening, and what does it mean for EU startups?
Yeah, I think already like 10 years ago, we had people from the ecosystem complaining like, oh, that's boring. Company XYZ raises this amount. Company this raises this amount. And I agree, like there can be in more interesting angles for startup-related content, but on the same time, funding is also one of the biggest signaling effects if a company is on a good
No,
trajectory and so
absolutely.
on and so forth. And I was at some points in EU startups, I was even thinking, let's maybe move completely away from news and just focus on like know-how, evergreen articles, data-based articles. Um, but in the end, I'm happy that we didn't do that because actually I think startup news and even those funding news pieces will gain more importance again. Especially in a market where there are slightly less news outlets out there than there used to be, because in the end there has to be humans who report about those stuff, right? AI can't make up the press release. There has to be at least like an initial source, and also it makes sense for a human, a journalist, or an insider to fact check some things, right? So I'm actually thinking like news will be more important than like those know-how pieces which you can create with ChatGPT and a bit of background knowledge. Um, so we keep
Like,
on doing that.
I don't know. Like, I mean, to me, it seems like the funding announcements, they are much more data than they are stories.
Yes.
It's
And I'm with you on that point that they're easy to write, right? And as soon as the news is out, the information is out there, then of course it's easy to kind of slightly customize it, optimize it with AI. But there has to be first a human
yeah.
who kind of says, "Hey, those are the facts. This is
Yeah,
happening."
no, but that human is usually not necessarily a journalist, but someone who actually creates the press release. And I have to say that, I mean, we just need to be a bit real here, because it is very rare that someone would actually fact check a funding announcement. That rarely happens, and it's mostly true for more significant and major announcements rather than
Yeah.
your run-of-the-mill
Actually,
kind
our
of.
news editor David, he's phoning up PR agencies on a daily basis. If he has
That's
any doubt,
That's
he's
very good
just
in him.
calling
That's
them.
very good in him. And I also hear that there are a lot of fake experts now
Yes.
being pitched to different outlets,
Yeah.
especially in the UK. It's been happening with the mainstream media. But yeah, that of course brings us to AI, which is a very big topic, and it can be a topic of a separate conversation, of course. But where do you see the pros and cons of generative AI entering the media industry?
Yeah. Well, I'm a bit sad and yeah.
Aren't we
So
all?
I'm not yeah I'm not very excited about AI entering the content world. Not just in like news media, but also places like music, entertainment. Right, like you can listen to AI generated songs, and unfortunately
God.
they are now so good that
Yeah,
you
there's
almost
loads of
like
them. Yeah,
you're jamming to them, and then
yeah.
but. So I'm unsure where this will bring us all, and if it will all be, it won't be all good consequences from that. So I think we will definitely see some negative impact in the years to come. Um, in the end, what AI can do is coming back to that music, AI music example. Like, yeah, you can create an AI song, but AI won't perform on stage and won't give you goosebumps when you listen to your favorite singer on stage or something. So I think that that human touch, that human feeling, bringing people together, sharing insights. Sharing, seeing the different personalities that will be even more important than before. But I'm sure AI will disrupt in a negative way also many aspects of media, entertainment, and so on and so forth.
And when it comes to business models, do you see it eroding because of AI, because of AI overviews, for example, on Google?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, there's we can see like a slow decline in organic search traffic. Luckily, EU startups is not that impacted much yet, but we see it a tiny bit. And on the other hand, we see like ChatGPT traffic, Perplexity traffic growing. I don't think that it will make up for the loss that
Most
we're going to
definitely
see
not.
in
Yeah.
Google. Um, but in the end, I'm also still thinking with all this overflow of content and where you don't even know in the end like what's the source like I think there will still be a lot of value for media brands that people trust, where people know, okay, those guys, they're not just churning out ChatGPT generated articles, but they were actually humans um, behind most of the content, or at least overlooking it. So I think, yeah, hopefully, hopefully we will still need those media brands. Yeah.
So are you now trying to instill this vision into the journalists working for EU startups, that they need to become more of the brands of themselves, be bigger on socials and all that?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, like where we have the EU Startups podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we will have a transition in the beginning of next year. Marcin, our current podcast host, he
Oh
will
yeah.
move on to to focus on some investments that he's doing. He's raising a fund, so we're kind of reshuffling a bit how we do
Mm-hmm.
the podcast. And the idea is to not just have an interview guest, but at least once per month we have kind of a round table with our team, maybe with a guest where we chat a bit about current trends and things. And it also gives us the opportunity to bring in some of our team members and to give them a voice and to let
Absolutely, yeah.
people see like who's actually working behind the scenes. And yeah, and then we involve our team members on stage at the EU Startup Summit,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely like this personal visibility of the team is hopefully helping to keep the trust and that people see, oh yeah, they're actually humans
Yeah,
there
yeah,
working.
that makes sense. Do you still get to write anything yourself?
Yeah, well, the last thing I wrote recently was this article reflecting on the journey of your startup so far and
Mm-hmm.
sharing some insights about the next chapters. I rarely write anymore, maybe like one or two pieces per year. I sometimes I think like I should do that more often because it's something that I enjoyed. I like researching, digging
Mm-hmm.
into topics, but then I have now this small team, and they all have their challenges, questions, and problems. So most of the time, I'm just like yeah, trying to keep them motivated somehow,
Sure.
trying to make sure that everything is working smoothly. Together with our events director Anastasia, I'm heavily involved in getting good speakers on board for the EU Startup Summit, to get
Mm-hmm.
some sponsors involved. But yeah, sometimes I wish I could just, like in the very beginning of EU Startups, like stay in my bed and just work on stories the whole day. Yeah.
I mean, as someone who used to be in the same boat, and like while I was at TNW in the head of media position, I think yeah, I wrote maybe three or four pieces for 2 years, and then after that, I was able to do much more of it. It is still as rewarding as it used to be. It is a great thing. So if you ever have a chance to do that, especially in your new position in the new situation, perhaps it would be possible. So I definitely recommend. I
Yeah.
definitely recommend that.
Hopefully, yeah. Try.
Now, Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time, and good luck with everything that you're doing with the youth startups and beyond.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a million.
Yeah.